is none at all. I build my own cathedrals and let them fall. 'Cause I don't want a theocracy or some idle ideology. We're all made from stars from above. I pledge allegiance to my soul. I follow where she needs to go. I'm a pilgrim for the empire of love. Johnson City, Tennessee, my home in Appalachia is still calling me. Give me a mountain, something divine, a river that can carve its way through stone and time. 'Cause I don't want a theocracy or some idle ideology. We're all made from stars from above. I pledge allegiance to my soul. I follow where she needs to go. I'm a pilgrim for the empire of love. I'm a pilgrim for the empire of love. Well, I don't want a theocracy or some idle ideology. We're all made from stars from above. I pledge allegiance to my soul. I follow where she needs to go. I'm a pilgrim for the empire of love. I'm a pilgrim for the empire of love. I'm a pilgrim for the empire of
You're tuned into the Americana Pulse on WDVX, and we just heard Empire of Love by Amythyst Kiah from her latest album, Still and Bright, that came out back in October from Rounder Records. The album stands in contrast to Amethyst's previous album, Wary and Strange, in that it attempts to uncover the joy that can exist when someone comes out on the other side of a period of emotional turmoil. The album also features collaborations with producer Butch Walker, as well as a wonderful roster of artists, musicians, and co-writers from S.G. Goodman and Billy Strings to Tanya Elizabeth and Ellen Angelico to Sadler Vaden and Tim Anderson from the 90s punk band Rancid. Amythyst was in town a couple of weeks ago to play a show in Oak Ridge, and she stopped by WDVX on a Sunday morning to have an in-depth conversation with me about the new record, her influences, and how working with a wide variety of other artists helped shape the album. I started our conversation by asking Amythyst about the new record Still and Bright and how it relates to her previous work.
So Still and Bright, I guess I kind of ended up being an unofficial sequel to Wary and Strange. Wary and Strange really dealt with a lot of emotional turmoil and unpacking the effects of having a traumatic experience and what that's like, and this record, it was the first time that I was actually in a long time that I was actually able to write songs from a place of joy and enthusiasm, because I was able to really, when you're dealing with working through mental health stuff, you can get really self-absorbed, and you have a hard time seeing outside of yourself and observing the world and being able to interact in meaningful ways. So it was Still and Bright. It was an opportunity for me to like, really dig back into the things that, that I find really interesting. Like I've always found like, Eastern philosophy, really philosophy in general, really interesting. And also, there's like different kinds of stories that I'm really interested to. Like I'm really into, cosmic horror and, psychological thrillers. And then also, I've like deepened my meditation practice. So a lot of that's kind of been influenced. So I've been able to just incorporate my interests and what I love into my songwriting as opposed to, crying. So it's been really nice.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit previously,
Yeah.
the tonal shift from the first or from the last album to this album. And, there's no way to know when you're working on a record and getting it ready, the world that record is going to be released into.
Exactly.
And to have brightness, to listen to the first track on the record and hear, in the darkness, find the green. Like, touch some grass, find your place, find something to help you get through.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what is it like to, now you have these songs of hope and you're singing them maybe in a time of a little darkness?
The timing is interesting. I guess, I kind of see it as, there's always, I was actually talking about this last night at the Oak Ridge show. There's that phrase, from a classic novel. I think it's The Tale of Two Cities, where it's it's the best of times and the worst of times. And I think that's something that's, I think, always kind of just a part of being like on this planet, is there are dark times and there are light times. And I think the ability to try to accept that all of these things happen, it's really difficult sometimes to hold these two things in your mind, that on one hand you could be having a great day and then somebody somewhere else is having a terrible life. And it's like, how do you, and now with the internet, you can literally see every single terrible thing that's happening to everybody. And, it's really difficult. I've had these conversations with my friends and family, and it's like, it's really difficult to like hold these two things in your mind. And so
the internet tries to make you see every horrible thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think the big thing is, especially with quite a few of the themes in these songs, is sort of a reminder also to myself, because, ironically enough, I've dealt with social anxiety for a huge chunk of my life. And so sometimes making human connection, which is, I fully believe, is so important. It's the center of who we are as human beings. We're social animals. We need community. And I think, if you have social anxiety, it makes it difficult to connect because you're always second guessing yourself and talking yourself out of making connection. And it's really frustrating, as anybody that deals with that would know. But I think with these songs, I think regardless of whatever darkness is happening, to try to continue to I think all that we can really do is to try to continue to kind of foster our community and our relationships, and to try to, and if we're in a situation that's not good for us, to try to find ways to leave if possible. I know that's not always possible for some people. It's not always safe, but I just think putting music out there, continuing to make art that is meant to encourage and empower people, regardless of where they are in life or who they are, I think is just, I don't know, I guess that's kind of been part of my mission as a songwriter, is to continue to remind myself and everyone our human nature and our need for connection. And it's okay to have differences and have different belief systems and have, different ways of living. I mean, that's just part of being human. There's been thousands of years of culture and religious thought and philosophical thought. And I just think, that inability to, I think the ability to try and, hold a space for at least understanding, if something's not your cup of tea, that, that's okay. Obviously, in mind that there's there's that consent's involved and no one's being actively harmed, so
there's a tea shop down the street. You can walk in right now and get 50 different brews of tea.
Yeah.
And
that's cool. Yeah.
I walked in there the other day and I was like, what do you recommend? And she said, well, it's your taste. Like, I can't recommend anything so it's, you find your thing and you find those connections within it where you can. And I kind of want to stay on that topic of connection because I want to talk about some of the collaborators on this record, and we'll get into influences after we do that. I want to go through maybe a couple of songs on the record and talk about folks that you worked with for those songs and then the album as a whole as well. And we mentioned Play God and Destroy the World. That's the first song on the record. It's a song that maybe not in this form, but at least a title that goes back a long way with you. And here on this album, you're co-writing with Sadler Vaden from the 400 unit, who Sadler writes, he makes his own records, he produces people. You're working with S.G. Goodman, who sings on the track, and then there's the whole Butch Walker of it all, who we'll talk about. But Play God and Destroy the World, we've talked about the hope and the bright feelings of this record, and then I say the first track is Destroy the World, but there is a hopefulness to it, and if you could just talk about that track and the folks you worked with to put it out there.
I know. I know the title track seems contradictory, but again, I think recognizing in order for there to be light, there also has to be dark. Again, a hard concept to wrap one's head around. I know there's a couple of Eastern philosophies that harp on that, and it's taken me years to try and understand it and internalize it. But what was that song in particular? The first iteration of that song that I wrote was when I was in high school, and like I said, I don't remember all the lyrics, but I know that at that time I was angry at Christianity in particular because I lived in a conservative Christian suburban area where I had all of the things that a kid could want, but there was this kind of disconnect between what I'd heard about the stories of Jesus and his love and his acceptance of people, and then seeing the people that said that they worship Jesus being very exclusive and not really showing that sense of kindness and compassion. So I was really, and then you throw in me watching The Matrix, and then it's like my little suburban mall goth brain is just kind of going all over the place trying to wrap my head around what is this? So all I could really knew how to do with my lack of life experience and knowledge was to just be angry. So I wrote that song. And the reason why I wanted to use the title again is because I wanted to use an opportunity to look back at that time that I was angry, and then as an adult, look back and see what was actually happening. Because when I get to the part where I talk about we're all going 6 feet underground, the idea is that regardless of what you're, being in a club and excluding other people and being hateful towards other people, I don't see how that is going to bring anybody peace or any understanding. I mean, the idea there is that you believe that your ideas and thoughts are more superior to someone else, and to me, it just doesn't compute. It just doesn't make any sense because, again, like I said earlier, all of the different, thoughts and ideas that have been here on the planet, how can anybody say that they have the right answer? And I know that's a controversial thing to say, but that's really how I feel, and I've always felt that way. And this was an opportunity to really address that because I think, it should be about, whatever we believe or decide to participate in. I think having it being led and, understanding, to me, that makes the most sense. And I wanted to take that opportunity to, look at the story of my younger self and then have a more mature life experience sort of perspective added to it. So it's like that kid was on the right track. Something was wrong. But instead of pinpointing Christianity as an issue in and of itself, I should have looked at, it's the people. And I learned that, throughout my life and meeting more people and realizing there's lots of really loving, amazing Christians out there. And, there's no reason to hate any religion. It's really about how is this particular person treating other people, and to go from there, I think. But
Yeah, and that goes back to society and
Yeah.
internet and being so involved in, the way that the world is presented to us
Yeah, exactly.
sometimes. But so you've got this song, and now you have that perspective, and you're looking back and looking from today to where you were before, and now you're bringing it to. Do you have it that formed when you go to Sadler to co-write? Where does he come into the process, and then bringing SG in to finish the song?
yeah, well, I think by the time I got in the room with Sadler, I had trying to remember. I know that I had the first verse and the chorus. I was really struggling with the melody. That was the main thing I was having a hard time, because and this is the reason why I really wanted to put myself out there and collaborate with other people, because and I've seen this with some of my favorite artists, where there's this amazing stretch of just awesome innovative, thoughtful music, and then there's this period where they kind of fall in a rut of just putting out the similar sounding things over and over again, because it's easy, that you're still going to go tour, you're going to sell records, so why not? But for me, if I feel like I'm starting to go back to the same chord progressions, the same melodies, that's when it's time to get a fresh perspective. And
Sadler can find a hook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he really helped me. He was really crucial in helping me find the hook and the melody, and then with SG, we planned to write, but we could never get our schedules lined up. So then we decided to just, at the very least, well, why don't we feature you on a song, because that would be awesome. And her voice was so perfect for that too. I just loved, just the way her voice is it has this very haunting and almost haunting and angelic, but also has grit to it as well.
Yeah, there's a tone there.
It's just this really fascinating balance that I don't hear very often in voices. So it was honestly awesome to have her sing on it too. And we actually were able to. She actually came into the studio. We already had everything tracked, but she came in. She drove in from Kentucky and spent a couple hours with us and laid down the vocals, and she was so humble. She's like, "Oh, I hope that sounds all right." And I'm like, "Of course it does." So, but I do the same thing sometimes. So, but yeah, no, she was great to work with too.
This is Play God and Destroy the World from Amythyst Kiah featuring S.G. Goodman on the Americana Pulse on WDVX.
Suburban smiles are just a fraud. Is it
tuned into the Americana Pulse on WDVX, and we just heard Play God and Destroy the World from Amythyst Kiah, featuring S.G. Goodman from Amythyst's new album, Still and Bright. We're talking with Amythyst tonight about the new record, Still and Bright, and some of the collaborations that went into helping her fulfill her vision for the record, including working with Billy Strings on the tune I Will Not Go Down. I asked Amythyst what she's looking for when she invites someone like Billy in on her creative process.
Well, yeah, I wanted him to go wild. That was my thing. I've been a fan of his music for quite some time now. I remember one time I was actually driving through Scotland. I was driving from England into Scotland because I was on tour. This was like several years ago, and I was just listening to. I was in that's a good mindset to like listen to new music or new to me music, and I listened to Turmoil and Tinfoil, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So ever since then, I was like, it'd be so cool to do something. And then finally, we have this song, and it's funny because. I was going in a direction where, I had some songs, obviously, that were very much, like, more country-leaning or more folk-leaning. And then I was having these songs where I was, like, throwing in, like, octave electric guitar. And I think, actually, for I Will Not Go Down, initially, it was actually, there was, Butch laid down some, like, Iron Maiden-style drums for it. And there was, like, electric guitar, and there was all this stuff. And the big issue was sort of, like... we don't want to have... The thing is when you're pushing the envelope a little bit and trying something new, there's an art to doing that and still, you might lose some people that just are like, this isn't for me. But, I've seen examples of people that went so far in one direction that everybody was confused. And I kind of wanted to strike that balance of trying new things, but also not totally losing everybody and throwing everybody left field. So really what ended up happening with this record sound-wise is I wanted to bring back in more like acoustic elements and like touch back on, my love for Appalachian folk music, and then also, bring in those more like contemporary rock elements. And one thing that I didn't really expect that would happen is the amount of like synth work that was going to be on the record. And it adds there's this whole other dimension that gets added to it. That's just like, it blew my mind. And I was like, oh wow, this is, so he had a really good ear for like adding those things in. And I was like, this is such a really fun, cool sound. 'Cause in my mind, I kind of like to think of, when I make, at least now I'm in this mindset of like, wanting to make music that make the music that I would like to hear. And there's plenty of music that I love, but I also I never want to be in a place where I'm like doing the same kinds of things, and trying to, and again, that involves kind of like, I don't know, finding ways to sort of, it's a balancing act to tweak and add and expand and also still keep your sound. And I really feel like I was able to do that here. I mean, obviously there's a lot of different sonic things that I didn't do on the last album. But then on that last album, there were sonic things that I did that I didn't do on the album before that. And so, but it's really about, and this is something I've always, the past, working with Tony Berg and also working with Butch, was that, my voice and the words being, the focal point. And as long as that's the focal point, anything I put around it, within reason, like it's still going to maintain my identity.
That's the anchor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do either. There's lots of thoughts and sleepless nights and whatever, but it's so worth it, to make it happen.
This is I Will Not Go Down from Amythyst Kiah, featuring Billy Strings on the Americana Pulse on WDVX.
I will not go down. I will not go down, down, down. I will not go down. I will not go down, down, down. I will not go down. I will not go down, down, down. I will not go down. I will not go down, down,
You're tuned into the Americana Pulse on WDVX, and we just heard I Will Not Go Down from Amythyst Kiah featuring Billy Strings. We're talking this hour with Amythyst Kiah about the inspirations and collaborations on her new album Still and Bright, including working with songwriter and producer Butch Walker. As a producer, Walker has worked with artists ranging from Billy Idol and Green Day to the Watson Twins and Adeem the Artist. I asked Amythyst how the collaboration came together and how working with Walker affected her songwriting process.
Actually, the way it all started is I met him at a Georgia on My Mind benefit that they have every year at the Ryman. And that's where I first met him. Like, we saw each other perform, because at that point I'd heard the name Butch Walker, but I'd never taken the time to really dive into anything. But I met him, saw his performance, saw what he could do, and I was like, man, this would be a great guy to. And this is when I was brainstorming about who I'd like to co-write with, and I'm like, it'd be really great to write some rock songs with him, because I had a few rock songs that had some, had some pop sensibilities, and I thought it'd be kind of cool. It'd be great to write. So we ended up having a couple of writing sessions where we wrote, I Will Not Go Down and Never Alone. And then initially I was in talks with working with Tony Berg again for this record, but we just couldn't make the scheduling work. And then after working with Butch on a couple of songs, I was like, well, I wonder, we talked about, what if, and by we, I mean my A&R guy, Mark Williams, at Concord, who's been also amazing to work with. And he helped set up a lot of the sessions and stuff too. But we talked about, well, what about Butch? Would he be available? Because we really got on really well. So really, we really just got to know each other, because that's the thing. When I did all these different writing sessions, it was kind of like speed dating. You're having to get to know someone and get the vibe before anything can really happen. And we had quite a few things in common, and musically we were really eclectic. We talked about symphonic metal for 20 minutes. We just had a lot of commonalities musically, and what we like to listen to, and also his, we shared our life stories, and just had a lot of we had a lot of overlap there. And so I think having that commonality and that feeling of comfortability of getting where each other's coming from, that can lead to wonderful things happening. And we kind of ended up through experimenting, we kind of found that spot. But when you have that commonality with someone, it makes it almost, I don't want to say makes it easy, because it's always a challenge, but it makes the whole process just incredibly just fun and exciting. And
so when you're writing with Butch, before you even think about asking him to produce, when you're writing the songs, are you talking about how this might sound, or are you just trying to get the words and the melody, and only after you ask him to produce do you come to that point? Do you have a sense of what he might want a record to sound like if you work with him?
Yeah, well, that was one of the things when we, because we were, I wrote in his studio, it was super easy to write the song and then just make a really quick demo, a really quick, also high quality sounding demo. So his kind of method was obviously he's we know this will be a demo, but why don't we go ahead and create I'll go ahead and create a rough mix and somewhat of a sound to get an idea, which I think is a pretty awesome way to do a demo, because I think because from learning from him, the more in the demo songwriting process, the more you can kind of get down recorded and get an idea of a vibe of the song in the demo, that really prepares you for when it's time to record, because you already have production ideas there, and then there's also room. It's like a rough draft of a paper, and to think of it that way. And so and that actually really inspired my own songwriting too, because now when I'm songwriting, a lot of times I'm in sometimes I'm, at home, but I'm also sometimes at my my little personal studio, and I just, find a garage band drummer, and like I kind of mess around until I find something that sits and feels right. So like incorporating, demo recording during the songwriting process has actually been a lot of fun, because you get an idea of a vibe before. Yeah. Because that was my issue with, with recording or like coming up with other ideas with the song, is that I would write the song, but then I had a hard time putting together what the vibe was going to be like. And to be able to think with that in mind during the songwriting process, actually, that can be too much. Also, there could be maybe too much information to try to digest. But I think the more you can incorporate in the beginning, it just makes for just better preparation, and more ideas can come from that. And when we recorded that, again, like with I Will Not Go Down, we had those drums and electric guitars. And when we talked to my A&R guy, that was one of his concerns was, well, this is very like rock heavy, crunchy guitars.
Can we add a banjo here?
Can we? Maybe we should. And he had a good, and I think he had a really good point, because honestly, when you pulled all that back, it became like a contemporary bluegrass song at that point. Yeah. And I was like, and so then that's when I was like, this is the opportunity for Billy Strings to come in, because he's got that background in metal and in bluegrass, and also and again, I wanted him to just kind of go wild. And when he came in the studio, he kind of just did 8 different takes over the tracks, and we kind of went from there. And one of the things that happened that I hoped would happen, I didn't want to force it, because you can't force stuff like this. Towards the end of the song, during the big outro, where he kind of, and he does this in some of his other recordings too, where he kind of like, him and his band will slowly kind of build and build and build into this crescendo. And I was hoping that would happen at some point during those takes, and when it did, I was like, "Oh my God, this is incredible!" Yeah. So, yeah,
Break for lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I kind of think of bluegrass as, the metal folk music.
This is Amythyst Kiah featuring her producer Butch Walker on "Silk and Petals" on the Americana Pulse on WDVX.
I don't feel like myself at all. Someone ghosted me, or just a love song. Waiting for you every single day. The door is open if you come home. I don't feel like myself at all. Sarah ghosted me, or just a love song. Waiting for you every single day. The door is open if you come home. A quiet rage lingers on. A chest of silk and petals sinks into the floor. The promise of the
You're listening to the Americana Pulse on WDVX, and we just heard Amythyst Kiah featuring her producer Butch Walker on Silk and Petals from the new album Still and Bright. We're spending this hour in conversation with Amythyst about the influences and collaborations that went into the new album. And for this final segment, I spoke with Amythyst about how important it is to have a wide range of influences to pull from as a songwriter, and about her unlikely songwriting collaboration with Tim Anderson from the 90s punk band Rancid.
Yeah, so I met him, went out to LA and wrote People's Prayer. Well, yeah, we kind of had a moment. We had a day where we just kind of got to know each other, and I came to his studio, and he's just a really just fascinating, incredible dude who loves all different kinds of music.
Does he still have the giant mohawk?
No.
Okay.
He looks like he's got a big old beard though.
Okay.
So it kind of like, unless he's shaved, it's his last time I saw him. But yeah, he's got the beard, so it's like the opposite effect. But yeah, like he he just has a just really like incredible story, and so we kind of just shared our our life experiences, and again just really like felt a really cool connection. And also I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater growing up, and that was the first time I ever heard any of Rancid's songs was in that video game, and that kind of opened my world to like different kinds of punk music. So I had a couple of Rancid records growing up, so it was kind of a dream come true. But I think what's interesting, and I've kind of realized there is when it comes to genres, when you think of like acoustic folk music and you think of punk music, you don't always necessarily think they combine, but there are quite a few punk musicians that do solo acoustic singer-songwriter shows. And because with folk music and punk music, the idea is like the people are empowering themselves to not allow authority to interfere and take over their life. So that's a crossover there. And
from
so
Alejandro Escovedo to Laura Jane Grace to Billy Joe Armstrong made an Americana record. Punk and country folk. There's always been that. That's always fascinated me too. Mm-hmm. The people who have made the jump from Alejandro can help found punk bands in San Francisco and then move to Austin and be the dean of whatever that is that's happening down there, and Uncle Tupelo, obviously, and all of that stuff. So it makes more sense than you think sometimes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So what happened with that in that songwriting process was I actually had a poem. The People's Prayer was a poem that I'd written years ago, and just never put music to. But the idea was that it was sort of like a prayer for. For everyone. And I just needed to figure out. So he came up with the chords and the hook for the words. And once I brought it in, and it literally, that next day when I came back in to write, I think we wrote and recorded a demo within like 2 or 3 hours. And that was the first the first co-write that I had done at that point, like for my own stuff. And that was like, at that point, I was like, I want to co-write forever, because this is such a magical thing. And again, me with my, my social anxiety, like, I've been meeting people. It's been one-on-one, because I wanted taking baby steps. And I think the most people that I had in the room, I think, was for Die Slowly Without Complaint, which was just one other person. So it was like, Jeremy Latito and Avi Kaplan. So I'm at this point where I'm sure over time, my songwriting, co-writing preferences might change. But right now, I feel like the magic really comes from when it's just me and one other person. Because again, you get a chance to get to know each other also. And I think that's really important for me anyway, to really be able to vibe with the person and have that connection before we can start writing. Because a lot of the stuff that I write, especially now, it is, very much like, I try to be thoughtful. I try to I have something I want to say and express. And so it's important for me to have writers that also have that same mindset. And I think that's, and I've been able to find that, which has been awesome. So, yeah.
Well, let's one more kind of topic here, and then we'll wrap things up. We've talked about Rancid, we've talked about Billy Strings, we've talked about metal and ska and the different things that influence your music. I look back through your catalog, and you did that covers EP a few years ago where you take on Tori Amos and Green Day and Katy Perry and Joy Division.
Yeah.
Going further back, you know, Fake Plastic Trees is on one of your albums, the Radiohead song. But on that album, you start with a Sun House cover and end with a Radiohead cover. and we're talking about punk music and alternative, and you came through the traditional music program at ETSU and talking about all those influences. I end my show every week with an REM song and then try to find where can I stretch the sound to show my influences that brought me here. How do you merge all of that? The Rancid, the Katy Perry, the Sun House. How does all of that become Amythyst? And if there was like an artist or a song specifically that you would point to that maybe helped you realize that it can all go together?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in my earlier years, like before becoming a teenager, I listened to a lot of pop music. I listened to Britney Spears, NSYNC, Christina Aguilera, Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, all that. I listened to like all kinds of pop music, and really grew a strong love for really strong melodies, really strong tight rhythms. Like that's always a thing. And also I grew up in a household, where both of my parents listened to all kinds of music, whether it be like country or rock and roll or soul or R&B, jazz, or whatever, like just all kinds of stuff, even listen, Enya and Yanni even make an appearance. So, just literally everything, world music. So I got my love of eclectic, hearing different. So I heard different kinds of music literally every day. So that was like part of my upbringing. I didn't even realize that most people didn't experience that until later on. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that this was something that not everybody didn't wake up to various kinds of music every day. So, and so I think that really started from there at an early age, like hearing all kinds of music and making connections of these different sounds. But, it started out with pop music, and then then I had my angsty teenage years, and then I turned to like alternative music. And then when I got to traditional music at ETSU, what really hooked me was the fact that I saw a lot of commonality with that music and with the alternative music I was listening and the pop music I was listening to, because we wouldn't have big pop vocalists if it wasn't for the gospel music tradition. Yeah. We wouldn't have alternative music if it wasn't for early rock and roll. We wouldn't have country music if it wasn't for early fiddle and banjo music. There's a reason why, Kurt Cobain loved Leadbelly. And, you listen to Leadbelly and you listen to like Kurt Cobain, and then you listen to Nirvana. It's like, oh, you can kind of
It's why that Unplugged album works so well. Yeah,
exactly. So, really all of these, American music as a whole all has a common foundation, which stems back to American roots music, which fiddle and banjo music, gospel music, acapella Appalachian ballads.
Yeah.
And then, when people started getting like record players and stuff in the mountains, then people started playing, the pop songs of that time also, incorporating that. So people to me, I think the idea of genres is obviously it's a commercial way of, finding how to market to who, and at the end of the day, like, once I started to see all of these musical connections, I was like, well, and I don't know, I try to think about how much of it, I think it's a mix of like that, or those early childhood years of absorbing different kinds of music, and then also like when I was able to like learn the history And then all of that kind of came together for me. So, there was several years where I just did old time string band stuff and only, covered traditional music. And then when I got back into songwriting again, I did have to find a way to kind of make all of these things work. And I kind of almost feel like Still and Bright is kind of, while obviously like Wearing Strange was amazing, I came to that project with like 2 different demos, like had folk recordings, like acoustic recordings, and then I had these rock band recordings that just didn't quite go together. And so, Tony was great for being able to make that cohesive. I think with Still and Bright, it was the first time that I had a little more forethought about how I was going to approach songs and the kind of sound that, I kind of wanted to, try to achieve. So there's the absorption and the learning, and then there's like this, I guess, the synthesizing of all of it. It's hard for me to really pinpoint any specific instance. It kind of just, you kind of just keep working at it until something happens. I know that's not particularly helpful. Maybe one day I'll be able to find a better way to explain it. But I just think the absorption of all the music at a young age, I just think it's years of listening to everything and, not really having much of a pretense for what I want to write, I guess, So I think being open and not having a lot of pretense, I think, can really be helpful in, accepting, being able to, pull these ideas together.
We're going to close this hour with 2 songs. People's Prayer, the song Amythyst co-wrote with Tim Anderson from Rancid on her new album Still and Bright, and one from the band Rancid themselves. This is Amythyst Kiah with People's Prayer on the Americana Pulse on WDVX.
We are the tender organs, do solemnly swear to recognize our relentless bodily deterioration, known as dying. We follow our passions, deal with our transgressions. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We strive to accept, understand, and respect others with tender organs. We are sentient, fragile, unstable animals who at any moment will be rendered useless. So we follow our passions, deal with our transgressions. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. We'll hang on for dear life until it's over. my bedroom wall. Having a party up next door, but I'm sitting here all alone. Two lovers in the bedroom, and the other started to shine. Oh my God, it's this blank stare, and a candle clouded off. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. He's singing, and she's there in the hand. He's seen his name on the marquee, but she will never understand. Once again he's leaving, and she's there with a tear in her eye. Embraces with a warm gesture, it's time, time to say goodbye. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. Ruby's heart is beating, but she knows the feeling is gone. She's not the only one admitting there's something wrong. The lover's in the distance as she wipes the tear from her eye. Ruby's fading out, she disappears, it's time, time to say goodbye. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. 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 Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho. Destination now, Ruby, 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 Soho.
You're tuned in to the Americana Pulse on WDVX, and we just heard Ruby Soho from the punk band Rancid and their 1995 album And Out Came the Wolves. We also heard People's Prayer from Amythyst Kiah, a song she co-wrote with Rancid's Tim Anderson. Amythyst Kiah's new album, Still and Bright, is out now from Rounder Records. You can find out more about Amythyst and the new album at amythystkiah.com.